it became very clear to me that the world was on the wrong path.
Hmm.
And one of the ways that it's on the wrong path, I think, is that people do not think for themselves. We don't have agency in our own lives, so we rely on others to live our own lives, to make our own decisions.
Hmm.
And and to put another way, centralization, right? I think centralization is one of the problems because centralization defers responsibility and authority to someone else. And Bitcoin is such a powerful tool because it allows the individual to take that back. And I think to change the path that we are on and to create a better world, step one is realizing our own power. And I do not know any tool available in the world that does that better than Bitcoin. I think the simple existence of Bitcoin, just becoming a user and learning about how the system works, encourages people to view themselves through a different lens and to realize their own power.
Hello, guys. Welcome to Bitcoiner. Today, we have the great pleasure to talk with John Dennehy. He is the founder of Mi Primer Bitcoin, my first Bitcoin diploma. And so we're going to talk about that. But before that, John, please, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me on, first of all. Um, I love talking with people who are just as excited about this as I am. Um, so my name is John Dennehy. I am originally from New York. I currently live in El Salvador. So I've been a Bitcoiner for nearly exactly 10 years at this point. And I'm really, really excited about what's happening here in El Salvador. Just it's the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin. I think I think what happens here is really important for the rest of the world. So yeah, before I came here, then I did a variety of different things. I traveled quite a bit, and I often worked as a journalist, not necessarily about Bitcoin. Uh, Sometimes though, sometimes I would write about Bitcoin, or more often, one of my beats was to write about value. So about currencies in different parts of the world and how people use them in different parts of the world, like rural, urban, and differences between perceptions of value. That was one of the things that I was always interested in writing about, which is probably why I'm interested in Bitcoin. It's just this really fascinating value proposition. So yeah, I was a journalist. No longer I'm a journalist. Now I am spending 110% of my time and energy soul into my first Bitcoin.
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you for being here, and thank you for what you're doing in El Salvador. It's really incredible, and we're going to talk about that. And I want to know that if you ever have been in other places in Latin America, it was your first experience going to El Salvador, or how was it? Have you been in Latin America way before?
Yes, I am quite fond of Latin America. I my first time, well, I traveled briefly when I was in university, so I must have been 19 or 20, probably 19. First time I ever left the United States was to visit Peru and Bolivia. And immediately after finishing undergrad in the US, I was not very happy with the direction that my country was heading in. And I wanted to live abroad and work abroad. And I found a job teaching English and lived in Ecuador for about 4 years. So Ecuador is actually it's kind of my second home after New York. I think Ecuador has been a really important place for me. I have like I have a godchild there. I have some very good friends, people that I consider like family there. So I go
Mm.
back and visit quite a bit. But in addition to those couple of countries mentioned, I've traveled quite a bit in Latin America. This is my favorite part of the world, and I also really like to travel. So I have been to every country in Latin America, at least
Wow.
one.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about your rabbit hole journey? Because I love the stories of all Bitcoiners. It's really fascinating because everyone we have like different approach
Yeah.
from the rabbit hole journey, and that's uh, it's fascinating because I always ask the same question, but the answers are way different for everyone. So I would love to know what's your story, how did you discover Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I think I was a little bit predisposed to Bitcoin for two main reasons. One, I was very political in the United States
Mhm.
when I was in university there, mostly anti-war. So this was, 20 years ago. So this is around the time of the Iraq War, post September 11th,
Okay.
and the military buildups there. And I was very opposed to them, which led to lots of arrests and some time in jail in the US. Um, for political protest, and which is why I went to Latin America in the first place, which is why I went to Ecuador. And then in Ecuador, so I already had a negative concept of the state
Mhm.
and the power of the state that already existed. I went to Ecuador, and I actually there was a change in government in Ecuador. I was actually working for the government of Ecuador, but a new government took over, and my visa wasn't recognized, and I ended up getting deported. And in that deportation, then they seized my assets. I had a bank account in Ecuador, um, because because again, I was working for the government. I was working for a public university,
Mhm.
and I needed a Ecuadorian bank account so they could have direct deposits. Um, and they froze that account and seized my assets, which was a very personal reminder of the dangers of putting state and money together.
Mhm.
So I was already very much of the opinion that money and state should be separated. And then in 2013, in early 2013, around this time, um, then I saw an article about Cyprus,
Mhm.
the European island nation, the small island nation in Europe. They had a bank bail-in, so they had some financial difficulties, and the country couldn't pay its bills. So they went into everyone's bank accounts and they took a percent of everyone's bank accounts. I
Wow.
don't know what it was, like 7%, 8%, to pay off the state debt that they had.
Yeah.
And I read an article about it. And one, the article, like my reaction to the article was like, that's terrible. States should not have that power. And two, the article mentioned, just as a throwaway line, something to the effect of Bitcoin users unaffected. And I was like, Bitcoin users unaffected? Like what is that? Like what's
Mhm.
Bitcoin? So then that prompted me to start to look into it, to read the white paper and all that. And it just, again, I already had this prior experience. So I think I was predisposed to it, but it just clicked. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I had two initial thoughts,
Mhm.
and they were, this won't work. The state won't let it happen. They will crush this because this is such a powerful challenge to their authority
Mhm.
that there's no way that the system will allow this to happen. That was the first thought. The second thought was, I want to try anyway. It's worth trying to do this. I don't know what the chance of success is, but it's not zero. And if it's not zero, then I really, really want to support this effort to try to make that a little bit higher than, a little bit higher chance of success. Um, so I got into that later that year. I moved to England and I went to grad school in England. So I spent 2 years there, and almost by accident, because I had another issue with my bank account because I had a US bank account.
Uh-huh.
And because I was using it in another country, it like triggered something, and then it actually I couldn't make withdrawals from ATM. So the workaround was for me to deposit deposit dollars that I had in a US bank account into an exchange, buy Bitcoin, and then sell the Bitcoin in England. That was the way that I just got money, right? Because the fiat system wasn't working for me. And I realized that there was a demand for it. I got to meet really cool people. I got to make a little bit of extra money, so I was using local Bitcoins, and that became kind of like a little side business where I sold, you know, quite a few Bitcoins on local Bitcoins, exploiting arbitrage between the price in the US and the price in England. This is 2013, so the ecosystem was not very well developed, so the price was a little bit different in each place.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a little bit higher in England than it was in the US. The infrastructure was a little bit better in the US at the time to buy Bitcoin. So yeah, that was so I got a I got very involved very quickly with Bitcoin. Um, and then I kind of took a big step back when I left England. I had some I had some legal issues with selling Bitcoin on local Bitcoins. Again, the government seized my assets. They froze all my bank accounts because there were a
Wow.
lot of transactions that just raised the red flag. Um, so that seemed like a good time to stop anyway. Uh, and it honestly kind of scared me a little bit. There was literally a gabble of police arrived at my house in England and were like, "What are you doing?" And it was it was
Wow.
it was pretty intimidating. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I feel like things were fine. There were no consequences. I mean, it was kind of a drag for a few months, but it felt like, okay, maybe I should take a step back from things. And I went on, did other things. I studied. I was getting my master's in creative writing and journalism, and I finished that degree, and then I became a journalist, um, often abroad. So I traveled a lot and wrote about different things happening in different parts of the world. And not that I forgot about Bitcoin, but I wasn't. I always loved Bitcoin. And I would talk about it individually, but I wasn't involved in projects. I wasn't, selling Bitcoin in on local Bitcoins and using peer to peer. I was very excited about it, but I wasn't really involved with it until Meet from Rare Bitcoin, and that was it was really the pandemic in
Hmm.
2020. I was back in New York, which was a crazy place.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, the whole world was a crazy place, and I had an opportunity to really think about the world and the direction that we were heading in, and the conclusion that I came to was that it was not a good direction, and we needed to change course. And the best way to do that would be Bitcoin adoption, and the best
Hmm.
way to encourage Bitcoin adoption would be Bitcoin education in the developing world. And then not long after that, El Salvador was like, we're going to adopt Bitcoin. And I was like, huh, that seems like a good place to go to.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, actually, uh, I I feel related with that because I was into Bitcoin, not into, but I knew and studied Bitcoin in the university around 2017. but it was more like the approach was blockchain, and the blockchain, the approach was the engineering approach about data and how you can manage for process and the factories and everything. And but like you, and when we were in the lockdown during the pandemic, it was like I started to studying it, you know, a lot and reading it. The Bitcoin standard with Saifedean, it was like mind blowing and really it was the story of the money history, you know. So it was way incredible. So yeah, and just like you, when I saw that my country was like uh, Bitcoin, we're going to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, and I was like, my, what my thoughts were like, is really Najib doing this? Because people people said had like the two opposite thoughts. One of them, I remember that people were saying like he's crazy, why he's doing it, and the other people were saying, wow, he's so brave because he's adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender. So yeah, the for me it was he's so brave because he's
Yeah.
when you know what it involves to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender is that basically he's fighting against the current system and the bank and central banks and everything, right? So um, my next question was why do you study journalism? Is because you like to you like justice, or you like to research things, or why why journalism?
Yeah, I think I know that journalism um is not the favorite profession of Bitcoiners. I know there's a lot of Bitcoiners that don't have very positive don't have very positive opinions about journalism and journalists. But I'm attracted to journalism for the same reason why I'm attracted to Bitcoin. When done well, both are tools that could be used as a check against power.
Mhm.
That is, I think journalism has strayed from that ideal quite a bit, and journalism has today is mostly about getting clicks, right? It's mostly about, I mean, it's essentially entertainment at this point. Um, and it's not independent, it's not impartial, it's not a tool against power, right? Like the ideal of journalism is really sound. The ideal of journalism is to hold power accountable. And that's what I'm attracted to. That's the strain within journalism that I'm attracted to.
Okay.
Um,
And when did you decided to go to El Salvador? To El Salvador, it was when right after Najib said we're going to adopt it as legal tender, or or do you waited for a couple of months? Or how was it?
so yeah, interestingly, again, I'm very into Bitcoin, and I'm also very into travel in Latin America.
Mhm.
And as soon as they announced it in I think it was June of 2021,
Mhm.
I almost didn't believe it, right? It was like, wait, what? A
Ah,
country's
but
adopted.
with June was when they were passing the law, right?
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
okay. Uh-huh.
yeah. So they passed a law in June, um, and it was actually other people that friends of mine that knew that I had that profile, and they were like, "So you're moving to El Salvador, right?" And I was like, I don't know, maybe." They're like, "What?" Like, first thing I thought of is you're going to move to El Salvador, and I was like, "Yeah, maybe." And then it took me like a few days to be like, "Huh." Like almost to accept the new reality, right? Like it was a surprise. I did not anticipate that El Salvador was going to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. I didn't think any country was going to do that. Maybe eventually, but not in 2021.
Yeah.
Uh, so a few days afterwards, or a week or two afterwards, then yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm going to move to El Salvador, um, which I already had that idea in my head about education. In fact, I kind of tried to implement a very early version of Mi Primer Bitcoin in Ecuador,
Hmm.
previous to that. So earlier in 2021. So in like March and April, then I tried to organize some community classes in Ecuador and Colombia,
Hmm.
which honestly didn't really have like much traction. I mean, the pandemic was still kind of going on, and
Okay.
the idea was to have it in person. So,
Hmm.
um, but then after El Salvador, then I was like, huh, I feel like there's an opportunity here. Yeah, I have to go to El Salvador. So I started planning the project more, trying to, fill in some of the details of how it would work, how it could work, and just working through the idea a little bit more in my head, and getting the website, writing a mission statement, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And then I moved to El Salvador in August. And the legal tender, the law went into effect
September
in
21,
September.
21st.
Yeah, yeah, in
Yeah.
September. So I moved there. I moved to El Salvador after the law was passed, before it was enacted.
Okay. Wow. And how do you come with that idea of Mi Primer Bitcoin?
I mean, again, it was really just during the pandemic. It became very clear to me that the world was on the wrong path,
Hmm.
and one of the ways that it's on the wrong path, I think, is that people do not think for themselves. We don't have agency in our own lives, so we rely on others to live our own lives, to make our own decisions.
Hmm.
And and to put another way, centralization, right? I think centralization is one of the problems, because centralization defers responsibility and authority to someone else. And Bitcoin is such a powerful tool because it allows the individual to take that back. And I think to change the path that we are on and to create a better world, step one is realizing our own power. And I do not know any tool available in the world that does that better than Bitcoin. I think the simple existence of Bitcoin, just becoming a user and learning about how the system works, encourages people to view themselves through a different lens, and to realize their own power, and their own agency, right? That they can make their own decisions, that they can be responsible for their own actions. Um, so yeah, I thought that, and it's not something different about me from our Bitcoin, um, is that we're really focused on people who are not Bitcoiners, right? We're
Hmm.
not we're not we're not trying to further educate people who are already have some education on Bitcoin, some that already have like a good knowledge base. It's not technical. It's the concept is to bring new people into the space. Um, and specifically, in the developing world, I think the a country like El Salvador is really going to lead the charge. So, my two touchstones are really Ecuador and New York. Those are the two
Hmm.
places where I've lived the longest, and where I have the most friends and contacts. I know a lot of people in New York that had Bitcoin. None of them really used it, though. They had Bitcoin as an investment.
Hmm.
In Ecuador, and Ecuador has a pretty similar profile to El Salvador. They were dollarized literally in the same year. They're relatively small Latin countries. Um, people could really use it in Ecuador for a number of reasons, for censorship resistance, just to have more control over remittances. Like there's real use cases in Ecuador, and I didn't know anyone that had Bitcoin in Ecuador. Like, and that's the place where it's actually needed, between the two, between Ecuador and New York.
Mhm.
So my thought was also that for Bitcoin to succeed in the right way, it has to be led from the bottom. It has to come from a place like Ecuador or El Salvador. It will not come from a place like New York.
Mhm.
If we allow a place like New York to lead it, then I think it will very likely be co-opted by
Mhm.
by the system that we really want to replace, right? There's a danger that Bitcoin loses its edge, right? Um, if it just becomes like a stock, like just this investment tool, like that's not its power. That is not the power of Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Uh, so like I already had the thought in my head that the real revolution would be led from the bottom. It would be led from people who have not benefited from the legacy system. People who are benefiting from the legacy system are not motivated to change it. The people who are motivated to change it to take risks, right? Like it's a risk for El Salvador to adopt
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Mm.
But a country like El Salvador or again Ecuador, they're not benefiting from the legacy system. The legacy system is not helping them, right? It's keeping them. It's entrenching them in in a power dynamic in which they don't get to decide, right? They already don't control their currency,
Yeah.
right? So it's always going to come from people who don't have the advantages in the legacy system. They will always be the ones that lead the charge to create something better.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's true. And how do you say that your approach is to focus and educate people that don't know anything about Bitcoin uh or maybe they want to start using Bitcoin. Uh, how is your first approach? Your first approach? How do you start to educating people like with my first Bitcoin? How do you do it? Because you work with the schools or communities, or how does it work?
Yeah. So just to preface this answer with the fact that I am not a teacher. So one of the core concepts that we have is that this should be locally led. So all of our teachers are Salvadorians.
Okay.
And more than that, we try to, as much as possible, have the teacher be as local as possible, right? Because we work in the whole country. So if we're working in a community in in the eastern part of the country, it should be, the teacher there should be someone from the eastern part of the country, right? And
Hmm.
probably not someone from San Salvador.
Hmm.
Uh, but in San Salvador, it should be someone from San Salvador, right? So we try to make it as local as possible because local context matters, and the people that have deep roots understand what the community needs and how to relate to them. Um, so we started with just intro classes,
Hmm.
which are just one-offs, and we have the advantage here in El Salvador because it's legal tender. I think there's a lot of curiosity about Bitcoin. So it actually has not been hard to find students because there's lots of people interested.
Hmm.
Um, and then that evolved last year, about a year ago. Um, we we started the Bitcoin diploma, which is a 10-week program.
Hmm.
And we started that in the public school system.
Okay.
So we had our first graduating class in June of last year, June 2022. And that was quite small. It was a pilot, essentially. It was in one school, and there were two classes. a total of 38 students, and we've improved the curriculum quite a bit from that first one, because it was very rushed. We had an opportunity that we wanted to take advantage of, with a very short timeline. But we have with each new group, so every 10 weeks there's a new group. We have changed the curriculum. Tried to learn from from the previous group, and make changes to improve it. And we are now in what is effectively the fourth edition, although the numbers start to make a little bit less sense because now the fourth edition is the first one that's not in Spanish. This is now in English.
Mhm.
And the one that we're using in Spanish now is the third edition for Spanish. Um, but we have grown quite a bit with that. So we every 10 weeks, we more than double, at least double the number of students and the number of locations. So,
Oh,
from one location, 38 students, two locations, 95 students, to five locations, 250 students. And now we're in maybe 10 locations and 500 or 600 students that are currently going through the program. And we plan to continue doubling in size every 10 weeks. Um, that's basically like as fast as we could go. And we do run it in the public school system. There's six or seven schools that we're currently running it in right now. In addition to that, we have also started to run it out of mayor's offices. We've taught some local government officials, more in the eastern part of the country, more in the Department of Usulatan.
okay.
So we run it out of some city halls and some community centers. We have a project with Bitcoin Beach, on an island in Usulatan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's not. So yeah, we do run it out of schools, but we also run it. I think we're going to start to run one out of our house. Um, but yeah, we are always growing.
That's awesome. And I think the education is very fundamental to, especially in my country, because I think now that we have the Bitcoin circular economy, it's really important to people. Even I think the most important ones are the teenagers because they are the future generations that are going to leave the
Yeah,
country. So yeah,
yeah,
and even in small communities because I think it's going to. I mean, El Sonte is the Bitcoin beach is the whole example of the Bitcoin
right.
can fix the problems of the economy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're the
And
pioneer.
yeah, and how do you approach to Bitcoin in your classes? Do you use different wallets? Do you use the Chivo wallet, or how do you approach it? Is it just theoretical, or people can use sats, or how is it?
Yeah. We do not use Chivo. We so it's very important for us that we are independent and impartial.
Okay.
So we're very careful to not tell students they have to use this wallet and they can't use that wallet. Um, so in the class, we do part of the class. So it's designed to be very interactive, and that's both the intro classes, which is where most of our students are. We had 10,000 students in intro classes last year. Whether it's the intro classes or whether it's a diploma or meetups or whatever, then we always try to encourage people to actually use it. We find that to be a very useful educational tool to actually have people download a wallet, send them some sats, they send it to the next person,
Hmm.
and it clicks for most people in a way that just talking about the theory wouldn't. So we try to make it interactive.
Hmm.
Um, so we don't have a particular wallet. We will say these are different wallets that are available. These are, characteristics of each one, and then the student can decide. The reason why we don't use Chivo is
Because it
is
has KYC.
twofold. Yeah.
Hmm.
One is we literally can't, right? Like when we work in high schools, the students, besides the fact that it's KYC, they're not 18, right? Well, there might be some that are 18, but many of them are 17, 16, 15, and that is not an option.
Hmm.
But for like an intro class that's open in the public, there might be adults in there. I mean, it's mostly adults, like it's mostly people over 18. Um, but we also don't use it there because it's KYC. The idea is that people could see how easy Bitcoin is, and like with some wallets, you download the wallet and immediately we could send you some sats, you could send it to the next person.
Moon wallets of Satoshi and or all of them, they
Yeah.
are not KYC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a strong preference towards non-KYC just
Mhm.
for demonstrative purposes. And then with the question of when we work in the school system, then it's not even an option. Even if there was, well, I guess they are tied together. Like you can't limit minors from using it if it's not KYC. But yeah, basically because it's KYC. That's the main reason.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I think that's one of the characteristics, right? That Bitcoin has to be anonymous also. So, well, not
Yeah.
anonymous, but semi-anonymous. Yeah, and that you don't require at the end a KYC.
Right.
And how do you see the adoption in El Salvador, especially in local? Well, I'm going to make that question in two parts, if you can allow me. One in like in tourism, and then with people in El Salvador, so with Salvadorians. How do you see it in the areas that you're working?
Yeah. Um, I am very encouraged by the progress here in El Salvador with Bitcoin adoption. I know there's people that think that it should be going faster or that everyone should already be accepting Bitcoin, which is not the case. Not everybody accepts Bitcoin, not everyone uses it. Um, but I think what's most important is the trend. More people use it now than they did yesterday, than they did a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. The trend is definitely going in the right direction. I think that's the most important thing. And also, this has basically all happened in a bear market. I think
Mhm.
once it becomes a bull market, then I think the speed of things will pick up. With and that's so what I'm that answer was mostly about locals, right? I think locals are slowly but steadily uh, being onboarded to Bitcoin. And we're trying to play our role in that by helping educate. It's a drop in the bucket. There's millions of people here, and we've only taught tens of thousands so far. Um, but we're just getting started. We'll have hundreds of thousands and millions, I think, sooner than people would expect. Um, but then in terms of tourism, like foreigners, I think there's a same thing, really. It's trending in the right direction. There is a growing community of Bitcoiners, not just as tourists, but people that are actually moving here and living here. Um, and a lot of them are, everybody's different, right? Some people are maybe they're retiring here, right? Um, but others, I've met quite a few people who have moved here because of Bitcoin, who are innovators, who have, really interesting ideas to start a new business, or a new project or whatever. And a lot of that, there was a delay for a lot of people. Most people did not come in 2021. Most people came in 2022. I think most foreigners wanted to wanted to wait a little bit and make sure that it was real. Again, I had some disbelief as well when I first started.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a little bit of a time lag there. So the people that came in 2022, I think we'll start to see some more fruits of their labor this year in 2023, and even more people are going to come this year. So again, I think for both the the trend is going in the right direction.
That's awesome, and I'm glad to hear that because yeah, I think the same way because most people think that it should be like fast, and I think it's not always the right direction. I think it's better to be slowly and steadily and but keep growing. And as you said, we are in the beer market, so yeah, in the bull market we will see all the potential. Okay, so we have around 10 minutes, so we're going to do this little game that all the people that watch the podcast already know. It's called Hard Truths, and I'm going to share you the link really quick while I explain you the game. The game it's rock paper scissors. We do it 3 times, and the loser had to pick a random question about this random list. It's not related with Bitcoin. It's like really funny questions about
Okay.
our life, and the winner make the questions. So it's going to be like short answers about it. Let me see. Here's here. Uh, I'm going to share it here. Okay, so I had to pick two random numbers. So let's see. And then you won. For me, it's 3 and 5.
3 and 5, is that what you answer or what I answer?
No, that's the question that you're going to make me.
Okay. And then I pick one. I'll pick a high number. I'll pick 88. I'm asking you 3 and 5, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Uh
Well,
so what's your most bizarre nickname?
oh gosh, bizarre thing. Um, I don't know. People bizarre, I don't know, but my family always call me Chele. I bet you already heard that nickname in El Salvador, and if not, Chele means white, that a white person, but uh, because I used to be very white, I am way more than I am right now. So, and it's like a nickname that I always had in my family. I don't know who picked it, but it's my familiar
Okay.
nickname, Chele.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I like your mug.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
That's awesome.
All right, so very cool. I'll ask you number 5 then too.
Yeah.
Um, Summer, winter, spring, or autumn, and why?
Oh, definitely summer. And my answer, why is because I'm from El Salvador, so we have the coast, and in El Salvador is always most of the time in summer. And currently I live in Spain, and right now we are in winter, and I'm very cold, and I hate it. But when we
I don't
have
like it.
summer, I just love it. It's the best time. It's the best season ever.
Yeah.
And you said 88, right?
Yeah.
Uh, wow, that's a that's a good one. It says, "What are you most proud of in your life?"
What am I most proud of? I feel like it's a lot more serious than what's your favorite season. Um, and yeah, I'm most proud of my first Bitcoin. This is I have been an activist for 20 plus years, because I think that we all have some responsibility to try to do something good for the world, to leave the world better than we found it. And I've tried to do that for much of my life, and it's a tough task, right? Uh, I think that Me Premier Bitcoin is an idea whose time has come, and it's attracted some really, really incredible people to push it forward, and you know, one, the future is uncertain, but two, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I believe that's what we are doing. I believe that we are putting our thumb on the scale to to help uh, to help determine what path we take going forward in a way that is a bit bigger than a small group of people should be able to do, right? It's like this high leverage
Mhm.
opportunity. Uh, and I am I am very, very proud to be involved with that effort.
That's awesome. Yeah, I believe that too. And okay, just for I think we're going to start to wrap it up. So last two questions. The first one is any thoughts or any comments for anyone that are thinking to go into El Salvador to it could be for moving to El Salvador or just visiting and making tourism. Um, what can you say to the people of the world and that and for going to El Salvador and the Bitcoin economy?
So everyone that can should come to El Salvador to see for themselves, right? As Bitcoiners, we don't trust, we verify. So don't take my word for it. Come here and see it for yourself. Because this is the front line of the next war. And I have a lot of hope here. There is a lot of hope here. Um, and you feel it, it's palatable. Uh, so if you can come here for yourself, and if you want to see what's happening in the Bitcoin space, there's two main centers. One would be San Salvador, which is the largest city, the capital, and the other would be Bitcoin Beach, and not even just Bitcoin Beach at this point, like the surrounding that whole area, right? Like the next villages as well. Um, we have Me Premier Bitcoin has a meetup the last Thursday of every month in San Salvador, and then sporadically at other times in places throughout the country. And Bitcoin Beach also has a monthly meetup. Um, they just had one. It was the start of the month. I don't know if they have a set schedule for like. I think it's usually on Mondays. I'm not sure what the schedule is for the Bitcoin Beach meetups,
Okay.
but both of those are great places to kind of plug in to the people that are already here.
Okay, perfect. And the last question is to anyone that wants to get involved with Mi Primer Bitcoin, how they can do it, even if they can do it if, like, for example, me, if I'm abroad, how can we get involved with your project?
Yeah. Um, so we have very grand ambitions. The focus is El Salvador, but the mission is the world. Because our ambitions are so grand, we need a lot of help. So the easiest way to help, and this does make a difference for us, is to donate to the project. We only use Bitcoin, so we only accept Bitcoin. And you could find on our webpage, which is mepremierbitcoin.io or myfirstbitcoin.io. You could find the tab there to donate, and that really helps us. Also, people could donate their time, their expertise. Um, you could be a volunteer, and you don't have to necessarily be here. We work with like I'm immediately jumping off a call off of this to go to another call, and the other person on the call is actually someone who lives in Puerto Rico, but they work for or they volunteer for me for my Bitcoin at the moment. So whatever your skill set is, we probably need it because this is a really, really big task. So yeah, donate your donate your satoshis, donate your energy, your time. your expertise. All of those are helpful. And on our website, an email to reach out to would be info@meetfromredbitcoin.io, but also on our Twitter, if you write us a DM, so that's my first Bitcoin underscore, just to get in touch and see. Yeah.
Okay, John, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about Bitcoin and your project. And good luck. I wish you the best because what you're doing is really, really, really good, really impactful. And I think people in El Salvador need it. People need education, and not just in El Salvador, worldwide, but especially in my country, they're living it. So education is really important. So thank you for your time. Thank you for
Yeah.
everything that what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
See you guys. See you next week.